In today's episode of The Heart of It All, we are talking about living options, the whole gamut, from a retirement community or long-term care facility, and all of the different versions of these options. Let's lay it out and see what options might be best. Where are we living in our senior years? On today's episode of The Heart of It All. Hi there, and welcome to this episode of The Heart of It All. I'm Teri Hart. This episode of The Heart of It All is brought to you by Capital Direct. In this episode, we are discussing where we live in our senior years. This sometimes requires planning years in advance. For those planning ahead, Capital Direct One Income Trust can help you invest in your family's future and care. Their carefully curated portfolio of residential mortgages has seen consistent returns with quarterly distributions, supporting Canadians and their goals for nearly 20 years. Start your planning by visiting incometrust1.com to learn more. Today, Pat Irwin, the founder of ElderCareCanada, is joining me to talk about where we are living. Pat and I have a lot in common. Just like me, it was her experience with her dad that showed her that there was something seriously wrong with how we are dealing with this chapter in life as a community. Pat spent years in financial services and then, after struggling to find a place for her dad to live when her mom could no longer care for him at home, and then his death, Pat began a consulting service helping adult children with their aging parents. Pat knows and has seen it all. I wanted somebody on the pod that could walk us through the options for folks of where they or their loved ones can live as they age. I think there's an idea out there about one trajectory, but the fact is there are a bunch of options. The spectrum depends on the level of care someone might need, as well as their social wants, and of course, finances play a huge role in it all. Pat has a BA from the University of Toronto, is an associate of the Institute of Canadian Bankers, has a certified senior advisor designation, and certificate in mediation from the Faculty of Law, University of Windsor. She also offers on-site lectures and webinars on elder care topics and supports corporate employee assistance programs, as well as her private practice. Pat, thanks so much for being here on The Heart of It All. I'm thrilled to have you.
You're very welcome. Great to be here.
So let's start about the importance of where people are living in their senior years. What are some of the factors that they should be taking into consideration with this very important decision?
Elder care in a nutshell is about anticipating and meeting the needs of a person as they age in terms of their health, financial, cognitive, emotional, all of those things are the factors. And this is not a linear thing. So cognitive may be an issue, but mobility is great, or mobility is terrible, but they're really sharp. So to answer your question, which is kind of how long is a piece of string, there's so many things that you have to know. So what we do is address the whole aging process for as long as it may last. I have clients I work with for 2 weeks, others that I've worked with for 15 years. So to answer your question, what do you consider? It's got to be a support. If I say to you, Teri, you need care, you're going to say, I do not need care. What are you talking about? But maybe you have macular degeneration, you aren't driving anymore or can't drive, you need support. What would that support look like? It would be this. So it's very much like anything, 99% implementation, where you have to figure out, okay, what does this person need? But also, what will they accept? How do I kind of introduce it? How do I make it happen? And most important, really, how do I keep tabs on it to know that I can meet their changing needs as they evolved? Because you don't want them to, and I see this all the time. People move their parents into a retirement home. They go, okay, that's done. Well, no, it's not. That's just the beginning of their journey or your journey together.
Okay, let's dig a bit deeper to that,
Yeah.
because I think people are going to hear that and be surprised.
Your parents' needs will evolve over time. I can move people into independent living and they're playing bridge and, going golfing and stuff. He has a stroke. He goes into heavy care. So that's now 2 retirement home suites. He's at 8 grand a month because he has more care needs. She's at 5 grand a month, 4 grand a month. Your whole scenario is completely changed, and it can change on a dime. That's the nature of elder care.
I feel like this conversation just changed on a dime. I want to start with what I think most people are facing, whether people listening to this are seniors themselves or they're caregivers, or they just have aging parents. The statistics are what they are. 80% of people want to age in place.
Of course they do.
So what does aging in let's clear that up for people. What does aging in place actually mean?
Aging in place is a euphemism for meeting the needs, anticipating really what I just said. So you stay home, but something is not going to stay the same. So maybe mobility changes. Maybe mom can't drive anymore. Maybe mom's cognition isn't good. She wants to stay at home. Of course she does. So how do we make that happen? Loads of things, lots of planning and knowledge. But yes, aging in place, absolutely. That's what everybody wants to do. And that's where the trends are going. So the baby boomers, I'm one of them. We're not going anywhere. I'm not paying. If I have to pay 8 grand, I'm going to stay home. I'll hire someone. I mean, I'm not doing that. I'm not going that route. Other people do want to go that route. They want the social aspects of it. They want the overall oversight and assistance. It totally depends. I think what your listeners probably want to know is what is the huge spectrum of options that are out there? And they're enormous.
So, Pat, I've got the list that I think is the progress that many people will face. So, living in place is not possible for everybody. There can be a variety of reasons, most of
Right.
them, as you mentioned. So, let's put out some scenarios for people. What if somebody is healthy? They're in a couple, but their house is just too much space for them. It's just too much of a house. Their cognition is good, their mobility is good. What would be the next step for those folks?
That is usually a downsizing thing, and I avoid that like the plague because that's what other people do. That downsizing is a whole thing out there. I don't do that except for my own clients. But you may downsize, or you may say to yourselves, why do the interim step? Maybe we are looking at a retirement community, not a facility. Okay, bad girl, Teri, you can't use that word. Uh, it is a retirement community where you can have a continuum of care or age in place. So you may say, why downsize to a condo when we're going to downsize further along the line to a retirement suite of 600 square feet? When I get phone calls, it's more exactly what you said, rattling around, and or sometimes the house is X years old and it needs a lot of work and we just don't want to put that work in. It's time for a family to have this house. Great. Okay, so what are your options? So you're both 76 years old. You're in good health, cognitively well. You've got this house in Oakville. You're saying, let's unload it and do something that is more right sizing for us. Okay, so what would that look like? This is when I talk to them really frankly about, okay, what are your medical conditions? What do you think might be on the horizon? What is your lifestyle? What do you want to do? Do you want to go to Florida for 6 months of the year? That means, do you live at the cottage the rest of the time? What do you want in terms of shelter? Just plain shelter. Forget support. So you talk about that. All right. Now, what do you need in terms of support? What do you think you'll need? Well, it turns out he's got the markers for Parkinson's. So you think, all right, he's going to have mobility issues, probably won't be able to drive. And the probably horizon for that is 3 to 5 years. Okay. She's having macular degeneration. She's not seeing very well. She won't be driving. So in the next 5 years, by the time you're in your early 80s, are you going to need a supportive environment of a retirement community? Possibly you are. So that may be what you want to look into now. Are there waiting lists for those things? Sometimes, usually not, because retirement homes, of course, are private. Retirement communities are privately owned. They may be nonprofit, but they're privately owned, unlike long-term care, otherwise known as nursing homes, which are, of course, government owned or subsidized or run.
Okay. So I've been hearing this term fly around a lot. NORC, naturally occurring retirement community. What is a naturally occurring retirement community, Pat?
A very good example is Manulife. If you know the Manulife Center in Toronto, that has turned into a NORC. And that's where a lot of people have gone. They've downsized from Rosedale into, I would call that, although it wasn't started out that way, a seniors apartment, in that there are tremendous amenities. And, the subway's right there. All the stores are right there. There's a little mini industry of dog walking people and caregiving people and food delivery people. And what they have done, the residents themselves, quite organically, have started to support each other and do things with and for each other. Coffee area, 10 o'clock, you got to fight for it. They're all down there. And that they are looking after each other. So that is a naturally occurring retirement community. That's really all it means. And it can happen anywhere.
So tell me about a retirement community. If somebody says, okay, downsizing is just, putting another step in our life when inevitably we're going to end up in a retirement community in the next 5 years, let's make it one move instead of two. What does a retirement community offer?
Loads of things. Medical support, first of all, 24/7 medical support is there. So again, dad has Parkinson's. Mom is not a caregiver, and she's not going to start being a caregiver at this point in her life. It doesn't make sense to have your own nanny who just sits there and looks at you for $40 an hour. You need help when you need it. So the concept is called shared care. So let's say you're in a retirement community and you could be in assisted living or independent living. But if you need help, you press a button, it's there. But there's also things called memory care. The other amenities, you choose a place, for example, called the Dunfield at Yonge and Eglinton in Toronto. It's got a floor full of amenities like a spa, a massage, a hair salon. It's got loads of activities and exercise class every day. There are movies every evening, lectures every afternoon, 3 fabulous meals. There's outings. They have their little bus. All kinds of things go on. And what happens there? I love going there because I have lots of clients and I visit them, and I'll be on the elevator and these ladies will get in with their, yoga mat and everything. And I say, you girls don't live here. You can't possibly. Oh, we do. Ha ha ha. And it's when something has happened in their lives, usually when they're widowed, and they say, I don't want to be alone. I don't want to move into a condo alone. Now, Irma from my church lives here. She's having a lot of fun. I'm going to check that place out. That's usually how it happens. And or a doctor says, look, I don't think you should be living alone. You don't want a nanny living in and cramping your style. This is a really, really good compromise.
I gotta say, I recognize I'm not faced with having to make that choice for myself right now or imminently. I'm 54, but it sounds pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Why is it met with such resistance so frequently?
It is a chapter in your life. It's kind of like the stages of grief, right? Anger, denial, bargaining, depression, acceptance. It doesn't have to be just for a death. It can be for any unwelcome change in your life. So now I'm saying to you, Teri, I think that you need to go and live in a nursing home. 2 words, and they're not going to be happy birthday, right? It's going to be, ah, ah. So, okay. Again, we talk about support. What would you think of? Would you like to go and look at? In 26 years of doing this, no one has ever called me and said, hi, I want to move to a retirement community today. Nobody wants to go. Okay. So that's a given. As great as it sounds, they don't want to leave what's familiar. Who can blame them, particularly at that age?
So, knowing that, when you
Yeah.
are in your kind of pseudo counseling role with
Yeah.
families, with the children or the
It's
nieces
not
or nephews.
pseudo. I qualified as a mediator, by the way. I
Well, there you
learned.
go. When you are in those roles as a mediator, Pat, and you get those phone calls and you know you're going to be met with that resistance, what are the conversations? How have you, what has your skill set taught you in terms of those conversations?
Oh boy. Well, first of all, there's a whole family dynamic thing here, and you've got adult children. That's what we call them, adult children, who usually are just rubbing their hands. Mom, move, move, move. I'm sick of looking after you. I'm sick of, and she's saying, I don't want to lose my independence. And the daughter is saying, I am your independence. Go, go, go. So you have to take everything down a bit. And quite often they say, Pat, you take this on, okay? Because we just get into fights about this. Or the brother who lives in California calls mom every Sunday. She seems fine to me. And the daughter says, I'm doing her laundry and her shopping. And no, she has to. So this is they're never going to be on the same page. So the trick, Teri, is to make her feel, and it's often a woman because it's a widowed lady, that it is her idea and her choice, because it is. I acquaint her with all the options, and one of them might be a stay-at-home nanny. I keep talking about this. It's not a bad idea. I don't mean that at all. And also a retirement community, or maybe a NORC. I had a lady, here's an example, who was looking to go from her large condo into Manulife and then maybe go to a retirement community. This would be a good progression, she said. So we had a long talk about it. And by the time you move and you're renting and you downsize and you do all the things around that, is this a smart thing to do? So I acquainted her with the options, what they would cost, what they would look like, what they would feel like. I usually gave them a client or two of my own to talk to really frankly about it. So now this decision is mom's decision. It's not yours. You two kids know. And it's not my decision, although I helped her see what the options were. You're a smart lady. You know how to make decisions. So let's lay it out.
I love that. I love that idea of it's not about like black and white, this or that. It is your decision. Here's the myriad of decisions, and here are all the pros and cons to each of them. Have a think.
What I do, like as a professional, is think, and within 5 minutes of meeting someone, I know where they should live. I just do. You get used to this. But you only give them, 3 or 4 choices at the most, because there's no point in bewildering someone. So usually you think about, where are they living now? Where are they comfortable? Where is their support system, like their friends, maybe their kids, their doctor, all that kind of thing. People sometimes say, I'm going to move to Thornhill to be near my kids and grandkids. How often do you think they're going to visit? Rethink that one, okay? My friends will come up and see me. They probably won't, because they're as old as you are and they have their own challenges. So think carefully before you make a really big decision. Or if you're going to make a big decision, rent. Don't purchase.
So that brings me to another thing that I learned about doing a little bit of research to have this conversation with you, Pat. I heard about something called life-lease housing.
It's like a condo in that a couple of places have this here. Christie Gardens has one. Baycrest has one. So you buy a condo and you live in it. And when you're not going to live in it anymore, you sell it back to the corporation. You sell it back to Baycrest or back to Christie Gardens. You don't buy it and sell it on the open market.
And what is the advantage to that?
You get to use it for your lifetime, and it does grow in value. So what it has grown in value, you or your estate gets, but it's not on the open market.
Aha. I would think also it could give people a sense of still owning something, which could be a priority for people.
Yeah. And also, Teri, they're much larger. It's a real live condo with a view of Casa Loma, and you got a couple of bedrooms and so on. One of the biggest problems, I mean, let's just face it, one of the biggest disincentives is someone saying, I cannot live in 500 square feet. What are you thinking of? So here's one of the things that I try to show them: either do a guest stay of a week or so, and or go and visit a client of mine. And the truth of it is, you have a big house. You're using a fraction of that house. There are rooms you don't even go into. You use the bedroom. Where the TV is, you don't even use the living room, the bathroom, the kitchen, even a corner of the kitchen. So if you think about retirement home living, what are you doing all day? You go downstairs for 3 meals. After breakfast, you have the exercise class. You do something in the afternoon. You go to the movie in the evening. When are you actually in your room? Not very much. It's basically a big closet. So it's not as awful as you think. A lot of couples panic and say, I have not shared a bathroom with this guy in 60 years. I'm not going to start now. That too can be worked out. And it's quite hilarious. You go to one of these places after breakfast, there's a whole bunch of men sitting around the lobby with the Globe and Mail. They've clearly been told, get out of the suite and linger around. It's hysterical.
I love that. I love to hear those actual stories of how people are evolving their routines and evolving their life with this huge change.
Yes. And they are making the changes themselves. And often I will say, do you miss the house? I miss certain things. The downsizing or whatever, when you and I moved together, Pat, and you focused on what comes with us. Don't worry about what doesn't for the moment. What comes with us. That was a good wake up call to figure out what's important. And it's really interesting, Teri. One thing, particularly women, their china cabinet. They can live without the dining room set, but the china cabinet, okay. So we take it with us. And as I pack it up, I insist they sit with me and they talk about it. The cup and saucer, the little vase, whatever it is. And as I unpack it at the other end, they're claiming this space as their own. So this is where I live now. And I work really hard to get them excited and visualizing their new space, creating their new space, shopping for it. And it's really quite wonderful. And it's very emotional for them and for me. I become part of the family for a while, and these are not stupid people. They know how to create a new life. You just have to give them the parameters.
The steps are there.
Yeah, the steps are there. And if they have deficits, cognitive usually, then I help them with that. We never judge.
Okay, so I want to backtrack a little bit here because I think
Yeah.
that this is such an important point that you're making here, Pat. I think that a lot of people find themselves in a situation not just met with resistance, but I think people can also be met with an absolute and total hard no,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
even when that person is incapable, whether it be cognitively or physically, of taking care of themselves. At what level can a family step in and demand that their loved one no longer live on their own and move to a retirement community when that person puts their foot down and says, absolutely not, I am not going?
Do you want the short answer?
Yes.
Nothing. They have the right to live at risk. They can be rattled with dementia. They have the right to live at risk. If they say no, even if they are mentally incompetent, it's very, very hard to invoke that. You can get a capacity assessor to go in, they won't let them in. You can set up care, they send them away on a daily basis. This is the hardest thing for you as an adult child to accept.
Is that when you have to invoke your power of attorney for
Doesn't
personal
matter.
care?
You can invoke all you like. If they won't move, they won't move. You can't get the police to take them away because they're at risk to themselves. You can't. That's the honest truth. Usually then, Teri, what you do, because I get these calls all the time. Can you force my mom to go into a nursing home? No. What you have to do, or what usually happens, is you wait till it goes sideways. They have a bad fall. Something happens that sends them to emergency. Then the social worker says, you can't go home again. The truth is, you can go home. Like, you can do what you want. It is a free country. But that's usually the catalyst that helps you, the adult child, and the family get her placed. That's what we call placed.
Okay, so we've jumped to long-term care facility. Before we go into long-term care, which you explained earlier is public system or funded by the government, I want to backtrack a little bit to the retirement community or the life lease housing. So, whew, I know this is going to be tough, Pat, but what are people looking at in terms of cost?
Well, lots. Now, when you talk about life lease, it's part of a retirement community. So it's just a different kind of ownership, like a condo. So I don't think it's something else. It isn't. It's part of a retirement community. What is the cost? A lot. 6 grand a month, 4 grand at least. And that's 3 meals a day, the accommodation. You bring your own furniture, of course, and services such as some sort of nurse, not an RN, but usually a practical nurse on duty 24/7. Will she come to you first? No, because she has assisted living to look after, but she is there, he or she. And the doctor comes in once a week and you get put on the list to see that person. The square footage of a retirement community is some of the priciest real estate there is. And that's why when someone's choosing a place, I really quiz them and say, okay, so if this place includes pub night and a pool and hydrotherapy, is your mom really going to use it? If she is, great. I'm just saying to you, does your mom want the Four Seasons or does she really want a nice, clean Days Inn? That's important for her to tell you that because she's the one who's going to live there.
So the spectrum of experience is as varied as any other real estate decision.
Of course it is. Yeah. It's more about the options. So what you get in retirement homes, popular ones sometimes have a waiting list. And within a retirement community, you can have different levels of care, and that's what we call the continuum of care. And that's why it's really important to choose a place that does have a continuum of care. There's nothing worse than you get your mom and dad settled, dad has dementia, and you are told by the office, dad has to leave, he has to go to a nursing home, we'll help find one. Oh, great. Yeah. And they have a 3-year waiting list. You've got to be really sure you've chosen a place that if dad needs more help, he can go to assisted living, to the assisted living floor, or it can be delivered in your suite.
So that would be, just so I'm being really clear for people who are completely unfamiliar with all of this terminology. So you go from where you live to a retirement community. And ideally you are looking for a retirement community that has continuum of care, or what I've often heard is graduated care. Is that the same thing?
That's more an American term, but it's a continuum of care, yes, because maybe there's memory care for dementia, maybe there's assisted living for you're not as able to ambulate, things like that. But you usually go in, not always, but often go in at independent living. And then as your needs increase, because they're going to, of course they are, then it can be accommodated, particularly, sorry, I knew you were going to say something, I don't want to interrupt, but particularly if it's a couple. You do not want to split your parents up. And in extreme cases, maybe dad has quite severe dementia. He's in a dementia unit. Your mom has her own studio in independent. They can still have dinner together. They can spend the evening together. They don't have to be separated.
So are all retirement communities private?
Yes.
Okay, I think that that's a really important
Some
distinction
of
for
them are
people.
nonprofit, but they're private. They're not government run, not retirement homes. No, they are, and they are covered by legislation, the Retirement Homes Act of Ontario. Everything is laid out very carefully. There's a Bill of Rights. Same is true of nursing homes. For the past 15 years, I've taught this. I'm not teaching it anymore, but how to run a retirement community. And it's a 4-year course. So it's a profession.
It is a and so why would people go from, because now we're going to start talking about long-term care or nursing homes.
Same
Would
thing.
somebody go from a retirement community to a long-term care or a nursing home?
Yeah. Yeah. 2 reasons. If their needs are really quite severe, so heavy needs, a retirement home by law only has to provide 3 hours of care a day. So again, it's mom and dad. Mom is okay. Dad is requiring a lot more care. You may be asked to provide your own private care in addition. I did this with my mom. Most of my clients do have nannies, and the place can provide it or you can hire them privately. If the place provides it, it is actually easier because they manage it all. But I've always had nannies. So that's an additional cost, which at $35 an hour for 8 hours a day, 12 hours a day, that, it definitely adds up. But it means mom and dad can stay together. But let's say dad is really quite severe care and maybe he has dementia, which is behavioral, somewhat violent. You can't live with that. So the retirement community would help you find and get on a list for a nursing home. But there, you can look on the provincial list. It says 137 beds, waiting list, 780 people. So waiting lists are a significant thing.
I'm sorry.
Could be 3 years. So this is why you need the continuum of care, because even if dad needs a nursing home, where is he going to wait out the waiting list?
What are we doing? What are we doing in this country?
Welcome to reality.
Oh my goodness, I had no idea that it was that devastating.
Oh yeah, it's bad.
So
That's a podcast in itself.
I think I'm going to have to
Well,
cover
if you
that.
remember during COVID, the army came in and went into various nursing homes, and no one in the industry was the least bit surprised at what they found out. Not the least bit.
Okay, so we're gonna transition into talking about long-term care or nursing homes, but I wanted to dig a bit deeper because you've brought it up a few times, and I've been remiss in not asking you to talk more about it because I think people understand what a PSW is, a personal support worker that comes to your home and helps with your home care.
Well, they can come anywhere. They can come into a retirement home. And it's important to know this is a non-medical person. They can't dispense medication. They can do what we call personal care, which is often toileting or washing. And they are trained, which may sound obvious, but they are trained to touch and deal with a body. So to transfer it from a bed to a wheelchair, to put it on the commode, to wash, to do all those things with respect and dignity and skill. Yeah,
What is a nanny? What would be a nanny to a senior?
same thing.
Same thing. So you're using that term interchangeably.
So it's someone who will be with the person, meet their needs, anticipate their needs. So let's say dad isn't mobile. So they will take that person down to the dining room for their lunch, help them eat, perhaps, come back, toilet them, help them dress in the morning. If medication is put out, they can say, Mrs. Smith, please take the pill, but they can't give it to them. They're not registered in that way. But they are, let me tell you, these usually women are the backbone of our society. We could not survive without them. They look after our babies, they look after our elders, they look after our most vulnerable members of society.
Those are our PSWs.
Yep.
We got to do better by those people, don't we?
Well, I often speak at their graduations because I know a lot of these agencies, and I just tell them, you have the hardest job in the world. I can't get through speeches to them without losing it. The things I've seen and the gratitude that we should have.
Angels. Okay, so let's talk long-term care. Let's talk nursing home. Do you see many situations where people are going straight from aging in place to long-term care?
Of course they are. And here's one unpleasant truth about it. If a retirement home is $8,000 a month, a nursing home, their rates are set by the government and they're something like 2,800 or $3,000. That's all they are.
Why are they so less?
They're subsidized by the government.
So all long-term care or nursing homes, for this conversation, I'm just going to use the term long-term care.
Sure.
So all long-term care facilities are
Bad
public.
word. No more facility.
Sorry. All long-term care communities are publicly funded.
Yes.
So is that 100% a good thing, or is there a gray area? Should we have private long-term care?
You know what? We can't even go there. That's the whole thing. And one thing I don't do actually is get myself into these loops, because it is what it is, right? I would love to change everything, but I'm worrying about the family who's in front of me right now. So I have a lady who has lived at home and everybody died on her, including her, her husband, and she's alone in a big house. She's living at risk. Finally, she's in hospital, broke both hips, can't go home. Where does she go? Social worker at the hospital connects with the government worker who gets her on a waiting list. It may be an emergency placement, which could be any place that has a bed in the GTHA, Hamilton as well. When you are offered a bed, you have to say yes within 24 hours and move in within 5 business days, or you're off all lists.
What happens to you? Do you stay living in the hospital?
No, they haven't got space for you.
So people who are maybe staying, aging in place, living at home, maybe who are at a risk to themselves, also find themselves at a risk of injury and then being placed in a long-term care community that is beyond reach of
Yep,
their loved ones?
totally. There's certain number of kilometers that they try and place them within, but yeah. I want to be clear, there's nothing wrong with nursing homes at all. It's just a totally different model. It's a public model. And one of the reasons that retirement homes have flourished is burgeoning population, but they're meeting a need between staying at home and having a nursing home in the middle. We can have some sort of assisted living. And it's for profit, and that's what it is. So there's another whole thing that happens here where people stay at home, but with support, with nannies, with people coming in. So that's a whole industry too. There are agencies, loads and loads and loads of agencies. And they have a place in elder care. Absolutely, they have a place. A lot of people stay home for good with a nanny.
Do you find, Pat, that for most people, the decisions that they're making around these issues come down to financial ones?
Yes, sure they do. If you don't have any money, let's be blunt. If you don't have any money, a nursing home is your option. And actually, if you can't afford it, under the principles of universal health care, OHIP, and they kind of do a deal. So no one is denied ever a place in hospital or in a nursing home ever because of funds. But the model of a nursing home is much more um, health-based, hospital-based. So you're given a bed. But there's one other thing I want to make really clear about nursing homes. Your admission is based on medical need, not assets. Some people think, I don't know why, they think you have to be poor to get into a nursing home, which is totally incorrect. It's got nothing to do with your assets. It's your medical need. So there's a big, long application process. There's a medical part, there's a social part, and then you're supposed to choose 3 or 5. And the first one that comes up, you have to say yes to, even if it wasn't your first choice. This is a whole thing. This is a big government thing, and that is the way that it is.
Can you be in a situation, Pat, where your health, whether it be cognitive or physical, doesn't qualify you for a retirement community?
If you want to go to a retirement home and you have to be a certain age, sort of 55 plus, but yeah, yeah. Do you qualify for nursing homes? Sometimes not. No,
Because your medical needs would not be sufficient enough for that level of care.
that's right. That's right.
Okay, I'm starting to understand. I'm starting to understand the complexity not only of the emotional choice for seniors and where they're going to live and the choices they're going to make, but also the complexity around public versus private, the financial commitment of both choices, and where you are eligible and where you are illegible. And I think there's a lot of falsehoods out there.
I don't know that people are lying, Teri, but I started this business because that exact thing happened to me. My dad wound up at a nursing home. We didn't know we had any choices. There was nothing wrong with the home. It wasn't that. It was just, we took the only advice we were given, put him in a home. He was dead in 3 months of despair. And I started this company. I put my hand on his grave and I said, nobody else is going through this if I can help it. So
Where
it's
should he
all of
have gone, Pat? Where should he have gone?
a retirement home. And my mom could have gone with him. I didn't know. I didn't know. And that cost him.
Cost you for sure too, without
Yeah.
question.
And this is what I'm getting at. the whole family is involved in this, and it affects everyone. So if ever you wanted to pony up for some advice, folks, this is the time. Because if you don't get advice and if you do make a bad call, that affects the quality and possibly the length of your parent's life.
You told me something when we first had a conversation about you coming on this podcast, which I'm so grateful to you for. I mean, your transparency and your frankness, I think, is so refreshing in this area for people. But you said to me there are times you get calls and somebody will just cry to you for 10 minutes on the phone. Can you tell that story to the listeners again?
Because usually there's been an adult daughter, invariably it's her, who's been trying and trying and trying to help her parents. They are resisting the help, or maybe they're accepting it. She may have a sibling that's sympathetic. She may have one that is not. And no one is listening to her. And her despair, there is a cost. I've made speeches about this, the cost of elder care in the workplace. An elder care, a caregiver can't even self-identify. So you're 40, you've got kids at home, you've got parents, you have a very demanding job, a demanding husband, all of these things. And no matter what you're doing, it's like there's a hand on your back saying, you should be somewhere else. Go faster, go faster. So you're trying to help your parents. You take food to them. You open the fridge. They haven't even eaten what you bought last week. You just think, why am I doing this? And no one is listening to you. So finally, when you call me, I say, yup, yup, yup. And they just lose it and cry. And I say, go ahead. I'm not going to cry with you because I'm here to make things better and to sort this out. And I always use that word. Let's sort it out. We always do. But somebody needs to listen to that woman. She's carrying it all. And so in the workplace, for example, she can't take overtime. She can't go out for drinks. She can't take a promotion. There's all kinds of things. And it's almost like a dirty secret. It's like a taboo that she can't admit she's a caregiver because here we go. But if a man takes his kid to the ball game on a Friday afternoon, that's adorable. If a woman takes her mom to the doctor on a Friday afternoon, what is wrong with her? Why can't she sort her life out a little better than that? Sorry, but that's it.
It does all exist that way, doesn't it?
Yep.
I'm telling you, what you just talked about, it being a dirty little secret and the cost of it and it being so much primarily a woman's issue is all the reasons that this podcast exists. I had all the privilege known to humankind when my dad was sick and then when he died, and I still felt like I was losing my mind.
Yeah. And you felt guilt. You felt all the emotions, anger, denial, bargaining, depression, acceptance, the guilt. And you're thinking, why doesn't anybody wake up and know this? And it's almost like there's not a dress rehearsal for elder care. So as I said earlier, please get some advice. Now, I think I told you in my practice, I will give anyone in the world 10 minutes free because this is the reason. I was put on earth and I get to honor mom and dad every day. So your listeners, please call me before you make an expensive mistake. Please.
The world is lucky to have you, Pat. I end every episode of this podcast asking people who know best, what can we do better in our communities to support caregivers?
Listen, let them self-acknowledge. Take away the shame. Nothing wrong with doing it. Means you have a big heart. Help them. Hear them.
It's interesting how many people have said that, Pat, that the issue is actually recognizing that this is going on as much as doing anything else, just saying, I hear you and I see what
I
you're
hear
doing.
you. I see you.
Well, I hear you and I see you. Pat Irwin, thank you so much. Where can people find you when they're looking for that free first 10 minutes? Because I'm sure people will.
www.ElderCareCanada.ca. I'm here. I'm always here.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Heart of It All, presented by
CapitalDirect.ca.
Pat Irwin, that is what 27 years of experience gives you. The truths, the hard ones, the easier ones, and the options you have for the senior in your life and where they can live. We would love to hear about your experiences with the senior in your life and maybe if they're making this transition. Was it met with open arms? Was it met with resistance? How are you dealing with that resistance? We love hearing about your experiences and anything that you want to hear about on the Heart of It All. You can find us on all social media platforms. We are on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and we have a website. I don't think I've mentioned it before. It is theheartofitall.ca, and on all those social platforms, it's the Heart of It All Pod. We'd love to hear from you. Wherever you are listening to this podcast, do me a favor and leave a comment. I love reading them. They absolutely warm my heart. And a rating, that is really helpful for the algorithm. It is a busy place out there in podcast land. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got lots more coming up on the pod. We'll talk to you again next week. And as always, please take care. This week's movie and TV recommendation, it is TV, and it is Ted Danson's Man on the Inside. Second season just premiered on Netflix. If you haven't watched the first season, go back and watch it because it's fantastic. Some of your favorite actors from yesteryear all star in this, and it's a wonderful sitcom about living in a retirement community. Man on the Inside, Ted Danson, Netflix.